And good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining in for our first post Diwali Pivot in Progress session. Today's topic that we have is something we got a lot of demand for. A lot of people have reached out to us asking us to do a session on this particular topic, which is how do you land your AI first marketing role? So we work with people across various industries. Marketing is definitely one of our core focus areas. We get thousands of clients and community members joining Pivot every year in marketing roles. And so given that AI has been a horizontal technology impacting different types of domains and industries, marketing is definitely one of the biggest use cases here, and we wanted to understand better from an industry expert who is already here with us backstage, Mudit Mohilay. He'll be joining me in a second. We wanted to understand better from him how folks in the field of marketing can build their AI skills and land AI first marketing roles to really level up their career. So, without further ado, I will bring Mudit onto the stage here. Hi, good evening, Mudit. Welcome again. How are
Hi,
you doing?
good evening, Arjun. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for making time for this. Really excited for today's session. I think, like I was saying just now to our audience, there are a lot of people who have, in the recent past reached out to us saying, you know what, I've been in marketing for a long time, and the field is changing and evolving like never before because of AI. There's so many, implications and practical use cases that are already happening on the forefront, and we need to evolve quickly with it. So, hence this particular session. And glad that you were able to do this. Now, before we dive in, just quickly, I think we can do a round of intros. I can go first. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Arjun. I'm the founder of Pivot, and what we do at Pivot is basically help people achieve their most ambitious career goals, especially when they are aiming for a new type of role, which could be, let's say, just a job in the same field, or many a times an inflection point in your career when you are changing domains, industries, your level in the organization, maybe your region. So we'll talk more about how we exactly do that. It's a fairly exhaustive platform with both tools and mentorship support as well as networking community. But for now, I would turn it over to Mudit. And Mudit, I would love for you to just share a little bit about your journey and what you do today at your company.
Thanks for that, Arjun. So, hi everyone. My name is Mudit Mohilay. Right now, I lead the content, brand, and communications charter for Encora, which is a digital engineering company with around 10,000 engineers serving digital natives and Fortune 500s across the globe. I come from a journalism background. I started out as the founding team of a tech media startup back in the last decade, right? And then that was most of you will remember that was a very interesting time to be in the journalism space, right? There was a lot of funding pouring into India, and we had a lot of startups coming up, right? So that's how we found our sweet spot. And me and a couple of my seniors from college. I'm an engineer, by the way, so we had some time on our hands. So me and a couple of seniors got together. We started a media company called the Tech Portal, and over the next few years, we grew it to from 0 to 2 million unique visitors per month. Raised a couple of rounds of investment from the Indian Angel Investors Network. Post that, I moved to Cognizant, where I worked with the executive leadership team for the infra business, advising them on and then helping them translate their vision for the business into sales enablement assets and sales enablement campaigns. Post that, I worked for HCL. I had a fairly long stint with HCL. I was there for around 4.5 years. And as part of the digital business practice, working on initiatives across the entire marketing life cycle, including public relations, content. And that's where my journalism experience came in very handy. Post that, I moved to Bosch, where I was leading marketing for their mobility business, along with leading content and PR for the entire org. After that, I had a stint at LTI Mindtree, where I was the director of marketing for their AI business. And that brings me to my current role at Encora, where I lead the content, brand, and communications function.
Understood. Interesting. So it seems like you have been at the intersection of marketing and tech for a fairly long time at different companies. So you it's not just marketing that you've done, but you've done it in the context of fairly rapidly evolving tech as a product. That is the core offering that you have been providing into your companies. Understood. So I think it would be good to just set the stage first, and talk about why we think this is an important topic to even consider for people within marketing, right? So generally, one thing, Mudit, that you might not know is a lot of people we work with and who are part of our community, they're mid-career professionals, right? So a lot of platforms out there, they focus primarily on, let's say, college students or freshers and early career professionals, because there is a lot of support needed at that level as well. But we found that field to be a bit crowded, and hence our focus has been on more mid career transitions, right? Now, in that regard, would love to understand uh, would love to understand better what is AI currently impacting the most at the mid to senior marketing level, right? Obviously, we'll talk about skills as well as a separate topic. But before we get to skills, I would love to understand deeper about how are the role and responsibilities and expectations from the organization specifically evolving for mid to senior level marketing folks.
Fair enough. That's a very interesting question, Arjun, because frankly, while while AI is impacting all the domains out there, I think marketing is one of those domains that were impacted very, very rapidly and right at the early onset, right? Because again, from a when we think about it from an AI perspective, right, content was the lowest hanging fruit. Right, and if you remember, right, a couple of years ago when ChatGPT came, the first impact point was content, right? People could, hey, we can suddenly write blogs and white papers and brochures, within a few types rather than, going through the entire 5 day or 10 day business cycle. So marketing was the first affected, and right now, from where I see it, it continues to be one of those areas which is the most deeply affected. Now, the way we see it evolve, right, one thing that's very, very clear is that the role of the individual marketer is going to evolve from being, uh, a standalone, either a standalone contributor or a leader of other marketeers to an orchestrator. And when I say orchestrator, I mean that the marketeer of the future, and not so much future, right? We already see this happening today. The marketeer of the future, or the current day, is going to become someone who is able to orchestrate AI systems in parallel with humans, and basically able to make them work together and complement each other. And I can give you a few examples, right? When we think about email campaigns, for example, right, we've always thought of tools like MailChimp, right? And you have a marketeer, an email marketeer, right, who basically worked with the content team to create the content and then feed it into the email platform, and then from there it goes out to the respective individuals. Now though, with AI, the marketeer would sit at the intersection of the email systems as well as the content, because now anyone can draft that content, right? Anyone using data, using insights, can create that first draft. And the tools like Zapier, right, now you are not even limited to sitting down on your system and building those campaigns and shooting them out. You can actually automate all of that using Zapier. And if you connect Zapier and you use it in concert with the OpenAI API, you can actually make it so that it's event driven, right? So for certain events that happen on your website, let's say a person registers on the website during the Diwali sale, right? You can make it so that the a Zap automatically initiates, it goes to the OpenAI API, crafts an email based on the data points that are collected from your website. So the email is customized and it automatically shoots it out. Now, to do all that, you can't just be, the traditional marketeer. You have to be an orchestrator.
Yeah. Very interesting. So it's less of getting down in the trenches and doing everything yourself. It's more about understanding how to leverage different tools, technologies that will build systems which are self-running and sustainable over a period, it seems like, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Systems are the key, and see, the thing is, right now these systems are not very very well defined because we are still figuring out, as we go along. Right now, we are in that experimentation phase to some extent. We have crossed it. I think maybe around 30% of the processes have already been set, are already being leveraged by marketeers across organizations, but most of the territory, right, is it's still uncharted. And it's a fun time to be a marketeer, frankly, because that thrill of discovery when you suddenly tie three or four systems together and voila, they are working. That is still there. But yeah, right now it's going to be about orchestration of systems which comprise of AI tools or AI platforms or AI agents for that matter, that work hand in hand with humans.
Understood. Very, very interesting. So, just following up on this initial topic that we are talking about, how do you see specifically, let's say, mid level and senior level marketers kind of imbibe this new normal that they are experiencing at work? Meaning, are people, for example, reframing their roles from somebody who used to, let's say, be more of an implementation specialist, or somebody who is just doing strategy, not getting into implementation, into something that has become more of a blended role, where you're not either implementing all by yourself or just strategizing, you're kind of doing both with the help of AI tools. So how is the mindset and the day to day evolving for the mid to senior level marketers?
You raise a great point there, Arjun, and I think a lot of marketeers, right, have been thinking about this because with AI, a lot of uncertainty has come. It has come for every career out there, but for marketeers, right, something that's very core to marketing, which is content, or which is design, which is creativity, right? Creativity lies at the core of marketing, and that has been impacted. So marketing is one of those professions which have been impacted the most by AI, and in very very fundamental ways, right? Because the core of your profession, right, now that can be outsourced to an AI. With that said, what we are realizing as we continue working with AI, as we continue leveraging it within our profession, is that humans are still irreplaceable, right? You just can't outsource humans. And the example that I like to take, right, is that think of it from a battle that's happening between two different armies, right? Earlier, all of them had, let's say, stones and sticks. Now suddenly you upgrade everyone and you give them spears and shields, right? You give them iron tools. Now, because there is a parity in tools, right, what the individual will do is still important, right? Now, if one side had stick and stones and the other side had iron tools, the other side would win. But now what's happening is that every marketeer has access to the same tools, every marketeer has access to the same capabilities. So now their individual proficiency and the organization's proficiency, right, as a whole, in terms of how we use AI as a tool, is going to become very, very important. So for mid-level marketeers, Arjun, or the people who are making the transition from mid-level to senior levels, right? What I see is that an understanding of brand is going to be extremely important, because when you work with AI, right, that is something that it's still kind of understanding, right? You can still feed it all your brand bibles and your brand books, but there will be instances where either it deviates a little and you need a human in the loop to bring it back, to pull it back, or it is constrained so much within the guardrails that the brand sets, right, that you need a human to prompt it to be creative. So in either case, you need a human to guide it, to kind of feed it, and to handhold it. That's one. The other extremely important value for marketeers going forward, right, is going to be judgment, because now essentially you have an inexhaustible supply of interns working for you, right? That's where AI is at right now. So now you need to exercise judgment. You need to kind of, be that moat who decides that, okay, you know what, this social copy that has just been created, this needs the following 5 tweaks before it's ready to go out on the platform. And these 5 tweaks can be converted into a prompt that I can then use in my next prompt that I give to the AI, so that these 5 things are addressed. So that is a key role that marketeers are going to play going forward, and understanding of the brand, and of course judgment. Those are going to be two core skills.
Yeah, I think definitely makes a lot of sense because that's where the biggest differentiation can happen now in terms of capabilities and executional proficiency. I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's switch gears a little bit and get to the part which we were mentioning earlier, which is how do you actually now understand what skills are most in demand, most needed by organizations so that they can get the most out of their marketing team, especially again mid to senior level marketers. Um, and what can these professionals do to acquire and strengthen those skills at par or better compared to their peers? How have you, for example, Mudit, been updating your own skill portfolio to match the evolving skill requirements that we have been discussing? I would like to understand, by the way, a lot of times when we think about AI, a lot of people tend to just focus on that, AI tunnel, meaning these are the AI tools, these are the AI skills. But like you said, I think you just mentioned there are a lot of adjacent skills and proficiencies. Like for example, for marketers, it's understanding of the brand and taste and judgment. So I would love to understand like how can folks not just acquire knowledge of the AI tools, which is critical, but in addition to that, how do they now upgrade their uh, thinking around these adjacent areas which are also getting impacted?
Thanks, Arjun. That's again a great question, and one which really requires me to think back to what I've done over the last couple of years. So one that immediately springs to mind, right? Because I was having a conversation with a peer on this fairly recently, right? Now, from a let's take a writer as an example, right? Which again are one of the core elements of any marketing team. Now, for a writer, their job has changed, right? Rather than say 2 years or 1 year ago, where they're typing out everything, whether it's an email, whether it's a brochure, whether it's a white paper on their systems, they are now leveraging AI. Every forward-looking company is encouraging, actively encouraging their marketing teams to use AI to build content at scale and speed. So, with that happening, right, what happens to the next generation of writers, right? Because we, at least, right, we operated for the last decade or so in the traditional way, and then we got handed this shiny new tool. But the new generation of writer that's coming up, right, they are going to dive into this from the get-go, right? You're going to jump into AI from the beginning. Now, without having worked on a writing campaign, and again I'm taking a writer as an example, right? It could be a designer, it could be a performance marketer, it could be literally any aspect of marketing that you want to consider. Now, without having that experience, without having those learnings, if you operate or if you start operating from the get-go with AI, it would be difficult to bring that judgment to bear, right? Because that judgment you have earned over the last couple of decades through through your regular work, and now with sudden AI enablement, where do you get that from? So that is one of the critical areas that I see marketeers needing to focus on. And I say this for myself as well, right? I've built that expertise in content, but now with AI I suddenly can create videos, I can suddenly create visuals, I can suddenly build full-fledged campaigns, right? I can run ads, I can do performance marketing. Now, unless I have real world experience, right? If I rely on AI completely and say that, what, ChatGPT told me that this is how you can run the campaign, or this is how the visual can be structured, or this is a nice visual strategy for a particular uh, audience segment. It might work, but it might not as well. So one thing for all marketeers to be cautious about, and this is something that I'm also very cautious about, is that you need to be grounded in any new thing that you are trying out, and because the temptation is there, right? uh,
Yeah.
Over the next few years we'll see that the marketeer's role is going to evolve until it's broader, right? It will keep getting broader. Now, the person who was writing content, whose role it was to be a dedicated content writer, will now be expected to also, maybe a few years down the line, generate visuals. Maybe, instead of providing a blog, provide an entire package which has a blog, which has a video, which has the social media copies, which has a few ad options, and you can do that, right? So the temptation, as this evolution happens, right, the temptation will be there to kind of just use AI for everything, but that is not going to work, because eventually there will be other marketeers who are more grounded in those skills, and who will be able to outperform your ads or outperform your narratives. So definitely one of the foremost things that I've been trying to pay attention to is to understand all of these other areas that I'm now delving into, from a fundamental level. I'm reading books about, for example, if I'm trying to understand design, right, I'm trying to understand the fundamentals of design. And AI is a great companion, right? AI can teach you. You can now that ChatGPT has a teaching mode on, right? So you can leverage
Yeah.
that. You can feed it books, you can ask it for recommendations, you can ask it for the logic behind its decisions, right, why it took things in a certain way. So I think having that fundamental knowledge is going to be extremely, extremely core. So that is on the soft skills part, right, or the creativity part. On the technology part, again, as I said in the beginning, there's a lot of experimentation happening. The tools are not yet set in stone. For example, right, for the traditional marketeers, most of the tools, we know what tools we leverage, right? If it's a CMS, we have our WordPress. If it's a
Right.
CRM, you have HubSpot. So and you'll have disruptors, right, from time to time. The way Figma disrupted the design industry, etc. But what's happening, and in a sense, there is a massive consolidation, right, for in terms of tools and technologies. But with AI, what's happening is that you have all these smaller tools cropping up, right? And many of these tools are focused on a niche, and because they are very, very niche, they are outperforming their larger peers, right? The large technology giant, which has 50 AI driven tools, may it could be that there are smaller 50 people team or 10 people team that have a tool that outperforms some of the giants tools, right?
Right.
So you have to keep an eye out for that, because they are going to give you an edge as a marketeer, right? So when it comes to tools, I've been very, very experimentation driven. I've been and I actually enjoy that part, right, where you get to pick up a new tool, you get to understand how it works, how it ties together with the other tools that you already have in your arsenal, right? So experimentation is going to be key. The second part is that there are multiple ways of doing the same thing, right? If you want to generate a video, you can generate it on Sora, but you can also generate it on Adobe Firefly. You can also generate it using Perplexity. You can also generate it using a bunch of other platforms.
Hmm.
So
Right.
experiment a lot, right? The more you experiment, you'll start building a customized toolkit for yourself as a marketeer, right? And this toolkit is, there's a chance that it's going to be different for every marketeer out there, right? I might use 11 labs for my for giving my characters voice. Someone else might use something else. So every marketeer is going, at least they are doing it now. It could be that consolidation happens later down the line, right? Arjun, 3 years down the line, we could have a giant go through an acquisition spree and build a consolidated platform. But right now, it's all about experimentation. The more you experiment, the more you learn, the more you build a custom toolkit that gives you those creative superpowers.
Yeah, so I think completely aligned. And to be honest, I think this last point that you shared, Mudit, probably transcends industries when it comes to at least non-technical roles that are being impacted by AI. Like whether it's a, let's say, a designer versus a strategy consulting professional. I think experimentation mindset makes a lot of sense, given that there's a new tool coming up almost every day, and you can't become complacent just using one tool, thinking that you have the grasp of the best tool in the market. But I want to go one level deeper on this particular aspect, wherein what we have also realized that it's not just about the tools, it's how you interact with the tool, right? Because it's a human machine interaction that's happening, and you definitely can be better at, let's say, whether it's prompting or whether it's feeding in the right information, like you said, before you get the output or the recommendations from AI. So, what have you seen on this front where people are able to make the most from those very tools without jumping to a new or a different tool? Is there some formula? Is there some best practice that you believe has helped you, your team members, people in your industry get the most output, or let's say better output compared to other folks?
That's again a fantastic question, Arjun, and that's something that again we have been actively, delving into. So, I'll give you an example, right? Now, when we use ChatGPT to build content, right, the typical prompt that we put in is that I want a white paper or a blog written on so and so topic. These are the three things that I want you to consider and ensure that this is the word length, etc., etc. Now, there is a better way to do that, right? And I'll tell you how. We came upon this almost by accident, right? I was working on something, right, and what I wanted to do was, it was a marketing campaign, and I thought, hey, how would Steve Jobs structure this campaign, right? Or how would Steve Jobs write this? And I
Mhm.
put it into the prompt. I said, hey, you are Steve Jobs, who has decided to pursue a career as a creative writer rather than, as a business mogul. Now,
Mhm.
considering all of that, how would you rewrite this? And I was fascinated by the results, right? I could see that
Mhm.
brevity of tone. I could see that, that every single word was very, very carefully considered. So I started experimenting with that further. And what I realized was that almost every person over the last few centuries, right, has a digital footprint out there, a massive digital footprint, right? For example, Steve Jobs has all these blogs, all these videos, all these transcripts. And for AI, it can use all of that to build a digital persona. And that digital persona can actually aid you as you go about using AI for your own pursuits. So that is something which has benefited me a lot. It has really, really helped me bring the right flavor, right tone. I mean, there are times when you feel, hey, you know what, Ernest Hemingway could have done a great job writing this blog, because it requires that, that poise, that seriousness. Now you can,
Yeah.
now you can bring them to help you. So that is just one example, right? But there are a lot more out there. The thing is that AI, as of now, it could change. But right now, what I have personally felt is that AI is very,
Mhm.
very good at responding when it has a singular direction. So when you are, for example, asking it to write a blog, right? One, of course, the more detailed your instructions are, the better the output will be, right? Second, when you're asking it to make changes, if you stuff too many changes within the same prompt, it will try to do everything at once, and the results are probably going to be not as great compared to if you went one by one and you kind of got it to implement your instructions in the prompt one by one. So there are a lot of things we can talk about in this direction, Arjun, but I think prompt engineering is going to be absolutely critical for every single marketer, right? And you have to think of AI as I mean, it's a mix. See, in some ways, it acts in a very, very human-like way, right? For example, there's a prompt that you can use, right? That let's say you want the AI to act as a sounding board, or you want it to give you a counter proposal. So what you can tell it is that, hey, I was just discussing with a peer, and let's say you're talking about marketing, right? So you can say, hey, I was discussing with a marketing peer, and they said they have an opinion on the topic, which is X. Now I need to prove that Y is correct rather than X. And I need you to operate as my, debating partner or my debating colleague and help me put a strong case together. So it's going to
Mhm.
give you a very, very, very concise and yet very informative list of items that you could bring to a debate. And I found this great when I want to build something and I need reference points, or I need a shortcut to the research. So this is great, right, for doing that research. So there are a bunch of tips and tricks around that, Arjun. But my recommendation would be, please go out and experiment. Think of
Yeah.
the AI as, as a colleague that you have. And the better you, and every colleague, every human has a different communication style, right? So does the AI. So the more you understand the communication style, the more you understand the nuances, and it will get to a point like, right now, when I'm talking to my chat GPT and I've customized it, right? It's a pro version, so I've been able to customize it to my inputs. Now I understand that putting this, using this specific word in the prompt, will cause the AI's response to lean in a specific direction, or using another word will cause the entire response to lean in a specific direction. So you have to be very mindful of that. And end of the day, whether you are building content, whether you are building campaigns, whether you are building visual assets like videos and banners or brochures, right? The prompts are going to continue playing a massive role. So that is definitely something worth looking deeply into.
That's I think that's a lot of fodder to ponder on. So I think thank you for sharing that in a structured way. Mudit, we have a couple of questions that have started coming in from our audience, and that actually gives me a good segue to just also highlight this to anybody who's with us today. That we will be taking up questions that you might have about the topic or something specific, something individual to you that you might be experiencing in your career, either updating your skill set or trying to land your next marketing role. So please do share this with us in the chat. We will be taking up all your questions very soon. I think there's one question here that I thought might be interrelated to some of the things we have been discussing. So maybe we can pull it up and see if you can take a stab at that, Mudit. So this one is from Ramya, and her question is, "What's your opinion or insight about AI generated creatives and the fatigue associated with it over time?" She did have a follow up as well, which said, in other words, if not done properly, it can be hard to stand out and bring about differentiation in branding. I think it's a very good point, and we are starting to notice that across the board with AI, where initial expectation is sky high, but it's not really met because sometimes these can be cookie cutter output, that especially the creative outputs can be a bit cookie cutter. I mean, one example which I've heard, I have not verified this information, but I believe read about it on LinkedIn or some mainstream news channel, that when OpenAI did its first branding campaign recently. So, they have not done a lot of marketing themselves. It's just been very organic growth. But they came out with the first, TV ad campaign and online digital campaign. And for that, they actually did not use any AI tools. It was all human driven, from what we understand. I'm sure there was some AI input that was initially needed, but the creatives, the output, like the actors are human, they are not AI avatars or anything like that. So, given that the biggest AI company in the world arguably is using less AI in its own branding campaigns, um, how do you make sense of that?
Right. That's a good example, Arjun, and Ramya. Thank you so much for putting that question forward, because that gives us the opportunity to talk about something that's been on a lot of marketeers' mind, right? Because suddenly you have a tool which can churn content out like anything. Right now, every single campaign, earlier you could be selective about where you are putting your bandwidth forth. Right now there are 10 directions you could drive a campaign in, and you have a team of 5 people. You would ideally choose just one campaign and you would double down on it. Now suddenly the expectation could be that, hey, you have AI, right? You have ChatGPT, you have Sora, you have Adobe Firefly, you have all these tools. Why not do all 10 campaigns? So as marketeers and creative professionals, right, we are going to have to be very, very careful and cognizant in a couple of directions. One, first of all, coming to the topic of AI generated creatives and the fatigue, right? I'll give you another analogy. A couple of decades ago, right, we had the internet boom, right? And suddenly every business had a website. And Arjun, you would remember, right, we had these banner ads, right, that were on top of every single article or on the sidebar of every article, and they were all over the place, right? And you could buy those banners for a certain cost per click or a cost per thousand views, CPC or CPM, and these are still around. But what has happened is that now we have developed, and I was discussing it with a few of my peers, a few other marketing leaders, and we have developed this sense where we automatically ignore these banner ads, right? Every time you are scrolling a blog, the banner ads are still there, but your mind will filter it out. Now we don't even notice them any longer because we know that they are not going to add any value to us. So something similar is going to happen with AI generated creatives. There is a very, very real risk that companies who don't do it right, who who just create content for the sake of creating it, and who use AI to oversaturate their channels, are going to get ignored. And this is not something new. I mean, I gave this example from the 2000s, right? But it has happened later as well, right? And you'll see a lot of influencers out there. I'll take that as the second example, right? Now when you look at a typical influencer on Instagram, right, they will generate, and again, the plateaus rule comes into play, right? That 80% of their outcomes come from 20% of their efforts. So if a influencer puts out 10 reels, right, maybe one will go viral, and that will drive most of their engagement, most of their views, most of their followers, and the remaining nine are going to, they are going to perform on an average basis. But when that person is creating that content, when that influencer, when he or she is creating those 10 content, ideally they're not saying that, what, I'll create one great piece of content and the other nine will be average, because what, Plato's rule, or I'll create two great pieces. In their heads, right, any of those 10 could be a hit, or any of those 10 could be a miss. So they have to ensure that all 10 have the best possible chance of succeeding. So this is something that Ramya, I think we are all going to have to think about as AI native marketeers or AI led marketeers, that there is a risk of overdoing stuff, prompted by this shiny new tool that we have. So we have to put our foot down in places and say that, look, this is a bare minimum that needs to be met before a creative can go out onto social media, right? And I'll tell you a framework, and you'll come up with your own frameworks, right? Now for content, for example, right, the framework that I use is utility, empathy, and action. So if a piece of content, we have created a piece of content, will this have utility to the reader? Will this empathize with them when they are reading this? Will they feel that, what, this person knows me, this person understands my problem? And third, will it inspire them to action? Now if a piece of content meets all these three requirements, then whether it's AI generated, whether it's AI generated with human in the loop, or whether it's completely human written, that becomes a moot point, because the content is good to go out in the market. So similarly for visuals, for creatives, Ramya, you'll have to create your own framework. All of us as marketeers, we'll have to build those frameworks where, and that is where, the human judgment, and that is where the human in the loop part comes in. That is what will make humans, going back to what I was just talking about, right, that judgment will become, judgment is still irreplaceable. That is how we will continue to, play a very key role in marketing.
Hmm. Again, I think a lot of very good points shared here. Thanks for that, Mudit. I do think that the part which you said initially about the banner ads and how our brains have adjusted over a period of time to kind of separate the signal from the noise. Kind of, I think that definitely will happen over a period of time as people get more adept at using AI. The only thing that I find one unique point, I don't know if we need to necessarily get into the bottom of it. I just think it's a side point that I want to add is that AI as a technology is also evolving very rapidly compared to certain other technologies that have come in the past, like banner ads or just website development. Um, those have not really changed so much. And because AI is evolving so rapidly, the kind of output that we will be able to potentially create, even with AI, will look very different, I think, on a month on month or maybe at least quarterly basis. So I wonder how that's going to play out in terms of us getting used to what's good and what's bad, right? Perhaps our skills will also evolve over a period of time to separate the signal from noise. But anyways, I think I want to move to the next topic here, and I think this is one of the most interesting things that will help people understand both how they can do real impactful work with AI, but at the same time use that as a proof of work or as part of their portfolio to showcase for potential opportunities for either jobs or freelancing or whatever it may be, that they are at the forefront of this technology, right? So a lot of times people have focused on taking courses on AI, how to use a certain tool, how to develop frameworks, and that's important too. But you can't differentiate your career and your trajectory based on just taking courses, right? That is basically a low barrier to entry. Anybody can take a Coursera or any other course out there. I think the differentiation happens in the outcomes that you achieve with the same tools and frameworks. So, can you help me understand how you have been able to build case studies for your own individual career as well as perhaps for your organization, where it's not just about, okay, look, I know how to do prompt engineering, look how I am using certain processes and systems to be efficient, but I'm driving real outcomes. And I want to actually, you know, um, allude to one point here which Satya Nadella actually made about a couple of months ago, maybe 2, 3 months ago, when he was asked about what he hopes to see as the ultimate impact from all the AI tools that are being driven. And a lot of times business leaders, including certain foremost AI leaders, had been talking about productivity and less time and efforts being utilized to drive the same outcomes. And he gave a very different definition, and he said, for me, productivity is secondary. To me, the biggest outcome would be how much GDP are we able to actually grow because of the AI tools, right? So is it going from, let's say, currently 1-2% growth to 5 to 10% growth? And that will be the real measure of success for AI, right? So again, I think that was a good indicator to think of AI as not just something that saves you time, but actually gives you better outcomes. How do you use this particular technology to drive real tangible outcomes?
So, Arjun, I think the answer to this question, right, is in the question itself. And when you use the example, right, I think what Satya Nadella is alluding to are outcomes, right? What are the end outcomes from all your AI initiatives, all your tools, all your all your experimentation? And when we talk about case studies right now, I'm just thinking out loud, right? If I was interviewing someone who was who wanted to who was interviewing for a role as a marketeer, as a marketing manager, or etc. uh, we are right now in a time, maybe a few years down the line, AI is going to become native to everyone. In fact, it is going to become native to everyone. But right now, we are in that sweet spot where a lot of things are still happening the traditional way. And our generation of marketeers is right that it actually has the onus of taking a traditional workflow and transforming into an AI led workflow. So that is definitely something I would look for, right? Because a lot of these workflows are transferable across organizations, right? Whether you work for company A or company B or company C in the same industry, chances are that from a marketing perspective, they might be doing 10, 15, 20% of things differently, but 60 to 70% of the processes are going to be similar. Not identical, every company will have their own idiosyncrasies, but the processes are going to be similar. If we talk about content, for instance, right, there is going to be it's going to follow the same process. Or if you talk about design, the workflow is going to look similar. There is going to be ideation, there is going to be mood board, there is going to be the actual visuals that are created, then QA, then reviews, and then finally when it goes out into the world. And those processes are going to remain the same across companies. Now, if I as a marketer am able to introduce AI within this workflow and do it in a way where it's not a gimmick, but it actually creates more value, right? Either by speeding the process up, or let's say providing multiple iterations for the same visual or the same piece of content, or contextualizing the asset, contextualizing the content or the design to a particular industry. That is what I would look for, right? Because I've instantly created value. So rather than I going in and saying, hey, you know what, I can use ChatGPT, I can use Firefly, I can use Zapier, I can use 11 Labs. That is not going to be as impactful as me saying, you know what, I can use these 4 or 5 tools to transform your campaign pipeline, or to transform your content creation pipeline, so that where you were starting with a topic and ending with a blog, you are going to start with a topic and you are going to end with 8 different assets that are contextualized for 5 different industries. That, in my opinion, is going to be a winner, because I, as an organization, or I, as a hiring manager, am instantly going to see the value in that. That, you know what, right? This makes sense. So, to sum up, when we are building case studies for our own careers, or even from a learning perspective, right, or even from being more effective at our own jobs, right, forget about interviewing, just to be more effective at our jobs, we are going to have to learn to how to become orchestrators. The first step is learning different tools, getting that basic AI literacy in place. The second step is understanding the company, understanding the workflow or the process that we are involved in deeply. And the third step would be bringing these two together, our understanding of the workflow with the tools that we know that are available. Now, how do I combine these tools with this workflow to transform it into a super workflow, so to say? So
Yeah.
I think that is going to be very, very important, whether it's in the course of our daily jobs or whether it's when we go out and interview.
Hmm. Got it. All right. I think, Mudit, we are coming towards the end of the session, and I think we have covered a lot of depth and breadth across various topics. But there's one which I would say probably hits the bullseye for a community like ours at Pivot, because we work with a lot of folks who are in the middle of a transition, right? Thinking about the next move, and a lot of times these moves are not just linear moves, they are non-linear as well. So a lot of the traditional job search strategies, profile positioning strategies, they don't always work in today's day and age, because the market has changed so much since COVID, right? So earlier, if you had, let's say, people applying to 100 jobs within 2 3 months and getting their target role, today those timelines and the number of jobs have doubled or tripled for many professionals, because of the competition in the market, from layoffs and from people just frequently switching jobs. Now, in a market like this, we really believe that differentiation is critical. Especially the more experienced you become, the more differentiated your positioning, your skill set should be compared to others. Because otherwise, if you're looking very similar to hundreds of other candidates on paper, or even during interviews, it might be more challenging for you to land a premium role. So, given this, focus on differentiation, how would you advise someone who is looking today for the next career move, especially within mid to senior marketing roles, how they can either leverage their AI skill set and outcomes they may have achieved using that, or anything else which you have found for yourself or for people within your network to be advantageous when it comes to looking for a new role?
So, Arjun, I would say the essentials, right, they are still the same. It's just that the bar has been raised much higher, right? The baseline where we used to start from, and as you said, right, 5 years ago, you applied to 200 jobs, you got 20 calls, and you sat for interviews in 8 of them, and you got 4 offers, and then you choose your next role. So that process is going to get changed because of multiple reasons. Again, too many reasons to get into right now, right? But you now have AI at the higher end as well, right? So now it's screening profiles, very differently to how they used to get screened earlier. Uh, a few points that I have noticed are still as true as they were a few years ago, and that I feel are going to stick around. One, networking. Networking is, and Arjun, if you remember, we spoke about this in our conversation the other day as well, right? That
Mhm.
networking is going to be one of the most important factors when it comes to making a career switch, or when it comes to finding your next role. And it's simply because when you put yourself out there, and when a person who's a hiring manager, they have to make a decision, and they already know you, right, they already know your strength, then it makes it just that much more easier for them to kind of consider you or give you an opportunity, rather than going into the unknown and taking a chance on someone who might or might not be the best fit for the role that they have. So networking is extremely important, and with the advantage we have in the world we live in, right, is that the opportunities are much easier. There are a lot of communities around, right, Arjun? You are running an amazing community, right, through Pivot, and we have so much access, right, to people. Like, I mean, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, it would have been impossible for a professional sitting in, let's say, India, to reach out to the to the CEO or the founder of a tech startup in America and say that, hey, I think I have the right set of skills for you. Do you want to interview? Now it's very much possible, and it's happening every day. So networking is extremely crucial. We can't kind of raise our foot from the pedal on that. Every single day, look for networking opportunities, find them, and don't go for networking when you are, or when you need a switch. Start, make it
Mm-hmm.
a part of your everyday life, because then when the opportunity comes along, people will reach out to you, or when you reach out to them, they won't feel that, what, this guy is doing it just because he wants me to put in a good word. So that's critical. The second thing is put yourself out there, and counterintuitively, maybe a lot of marketeers, because we when we put content out, right, it goes under a company's or an organization's logo. So a lot of us may not be as comfortable putting ourselves and our individual capacity out there, but that's key, because the more you do that, the more the more confidence you inspire for yourself out in the industry. And it could be as simple as a LinkedIn post, or it could be as simple as a video you record and put out there. The thing to consider, though, is that be judicious with the use of AI there, because what you don't want to do is, you don't want to put yourself out there and have people think, oh, you know what, this guy just uses AI to generate all his content. Your personality needs to shine through, and that can only happen when you are speaking to them through the heart, right? When you are share your experiences, share your and again, another trap that we fall into, right, is we think, hey, why would someone be interested in this? This is this is too unimportant, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing that's unimportant. Either your content will be, or the post that you put out, or the story that you put out will be something that's very new to the person who's reading it, and it might engage them, inspire them. Or if it's something that they have also gone through, it's instantly going to create that connection where they empathize with it. So either way, keep putting out content, keep increasing your visibility. That would be, I would say, the second important factor. The third would
Mm-hmm.
be, and this, again, moving back to the AI aspect of the conversation, right? The third would be, if you are positioning yourself as an AI native or an AI led marketeer, build a portfolio. And the portfolio, maybe your organization gives you the opportunity to build a portfolio, or maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, build it on your own. And it's very simple, right? One thing that I did, right, a few weekends ago, Arjun, and I did it just because I wanted to experiment. I come from a journalism background, right? Like I said, and I wanted to see whether it could be. I was reading an article, right, about a one-person unicorn, how maybe in the next decade we are going to have a single person run $1 billion company. And I thought, hey, can a single person run an entire media house by themselves with the aid of AI? And I started experimenting. I used platforms like Replit to wipe code the website. I used Zapier to type with OpenAI, and suddenly I've built a platform where I can email the topic to a certain email address. It generates the entire article, SEO optimizes it, creates a featured image, sends it back to me for verification, and once I say approved, it publishes it out on the platform. Now, forget about, I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, right? So forget about the fun. I learned a lot while building it, from Zapier, how to use Zapier, how to use Replit. Even putting that aside, now I have a working tool that I can put in my portfolio, and the next time I'm having a conversation, I can show it, right, that look, this is something that I've created. And this will give you enough learnings to power your content, your outreach, all of that as well. So the third part is build a portfolio using AI, solve actual problems, right, that you face as a marketeer, or solve problems that others are facing in the industry. Build tools that can solve them, talk about the learnings, and then you have a cycle which will increase your visibility, and which will create more opportunities for you.
So I guess it's networking, there is personal branding or content creation, and then portfolio building. These three things that you would suggest. Um, I see a theme here, Mudit, which I wanted to point out for our audience, which is that all these three things, right? They take time and effort. And it might feel counterintuitive to apply this particular advice because it might feel like, okay, I can just hit easy apply on LinkedIn and continue to apply to jobs. Um, Within like 5-10 minutes, I can apply to, 2-3 jobs and then move on with my life, or, continue to apply to tens of jobs in the day. But very few people think about putting in the time and effort to these three types of areas that you have said. And generally, when you want above average outcomes or what we call success, basically, you need to do these less prevalent things. Because if you do something that most of the people are doing, you get average outcomes or below average outcomes, right? So I think very salient points, very important action items that people can take away from your answer. But know that it will require time and effort, even if you use AI. Like Mudit said, there is a chance that you're creating content and you'll be tempted to just copy paste whatever you get from GPT or another AI tool, but then it will have counter effect. You might not see much visibility, you might not see that much engagement. So doing it with the right intent and doing it consistently to make sure you're not just checking the box, but you're actually trying to drive real outcomes. I think that's going to be the differentiator and the make or break in this. But thanks, Mudit. I think we have covered pretty much everything that we were planning to, and then some. I think you have a wealth of experience in this area, so I really appreciate your time and insights. Is there anything, any final points or key takeaways that you would like to leave the audience with before we wrap it up?
No, thanks so much for having me here, Arjun. I really, really, enjoy, and then it was a very thought-provoking conversation, right? I'm going to go back with some food for thought as well. So thanks for that. In terms of, a final takeaway, I would say is that the times that we are in right now, they are very, very different from anything we've had over the last few decades. We are at an inflection point, and there are going to be a lot of challenges. I know people are worried right now about careers, about jobs, and it's a fair worry. I'm worried as well. But with all of these challenges, right, there are also going to a lot of opportunities are also going to come up as well. So, and the more the more I understand AI, the more I work with AI, the more I realize that look, you will need humans, right? You will need humans to direct AI, to guide AI, and essentially what's going to happen is that AI is going to amplify us, right? So I think there was a superhero movie, right, Arjun, and in that it says that you get this power and it amplifies what's already inside you, right? If you're good, you become great. If you're bad, you become worse. So I think that is going to happen, to creativity as well. We as individuals, we are going to have to try to become more creative, read more, write more, right? And then we can use AI to amplify all of that. So all we have to do is keep ourselves open to learning. That is going to be critical. We have to be open to learning. We have to be open to reskilling, upskilling. That is not going anywhere now. The days when reached a certain position and you could live there in perpetuity are gone. So be open to upskilling, reskilling. Keep yourself open to opportunities. Keep yourself open to pivots, right? As we say, and things will work out just fine.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for that summation. And I believe, Mudit, if people want to reach out to you, can they DM you on LinkedIn or connect with
Absolutely.
you on LinkedIn? Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, great. So thank you everyone who was able to join us today on Thursday evening. Really appreciate you taking time out from your work and your personal family time. I hope that you were able to get a lot of practical insights, something that you can actually apply in your day to day and get some good outcomes. If you're looking for any support on transitioning to your next role, please do check out Pivot. The link for our website is shared in my signature here. It's mypivot.work. And obviously, I would highly recommend following Mudit on LinkedIn. And if you believe he could be helpful to you, perhaps even DM him. With that, we have come to a close for today's session, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Mudit,